the World Bank Group committed its first investment in Cote d'Ivoire in 1954. That initial loan was in the amount of $7.5 million. The funds were dedicated to improving the management of the Abidjan-Niger railway network, known at the time in short by the acronym RAN. Over the years, this corporation diversified into all socioeconomic sectors, contributing towards the revitalization of the so-called Ivorian miracle, and driven by the boom in the coffee and cocoa sector. In the late 1970s, as prices for these cash crops and other raw materials fell, Cote d'Ivoire started a downward spiral, which degenerated into the series of political crises and armed conflicts of the 1990s. As a consequence, the country raked up a huge debt vis-à-vis its partners, including the World Bank Group, which in 2004 froze cooperation and protests at the failure to service a $430 million in debt arrears. The World Bank Group, however, continued to provide minimal support to the country through the Post-conflict Fund and drawing on resources from the low-income country under Stress Trust Fund. In 2008, the bank returned to its head offices on the banks of the Ebri Lagoon.
Extremely important for the World Bank Group to be present in a country like Cote d'Ivoire in particular, but in conflict countries in general. When countries go through conflicts, they become even more fragile. The fabric of the economy is destroyed. The fabric of the administration. There's greater imbalances and injustice. People are not served the way they should by governments.
First challenge: restore basic social services and revitalize an economy weakened by a decade of multifaceted crises. Between 2008 and 2013, the World Bank mobilized almost $2 billion for Cote d'Ivoire in grant. It wasn't loans but grants which helped Cote d'Ivoire have a better image and improve its population's living conditions. For example, part of this money went to projects for youth employment and ex-combatants through a post-conflict assistance project. Results were quickly achieved both in Abidjan and in other towns within the country. We cleaned Abidjan from all the garbage, and the system put in place continues to show improvements. We can also see the drastic reduction of the cost of works. One of the particularities of the bank's portfolio in Cote d'Ivoire is that it is multi-sectorial. It covered many social sectors that impact the economy, like agriculture, health, governance, finance, mining and oil, transportation, all the key sectors which support the economy and human development. Attentive to the challenges posed by a weakened state recovering from conflict, the World Bank Group simplified its procedures in Cote d'Ivoire. We've had to overcome the suspension of Cote d'Ivoire since 2004 from all banks' disbursements. Nevertheless, we had to make an exception because in 2007, we've had to quickly respond to urgent needs. So we've had to be more flexible by using emergency method to quickly respond to our client needs. This allowed the bank to design and improve projects in a very short time to urgently deal with the situation. The crisis also affected the private sector, and Cote d'Ivoire's ranking in the Doing Business report regressed considerably. To help halt the downward spiral and give fresh impetus to the private sector, the World Bank awarded a $15 million grant for the Small and Medium Enterprise Revitalization and Governance Project. The International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, was also called to the rescue.
The private sector was quite impacted by the crisis. For more than 10 years, they had not been able to secure proper loans and proper financing, so it was important for IFC to come back and be able to demonstrate to other foreign investors that we had faith in Cote d'Ivoire and that Cote d'Ivoire was worth giving a shot. To give them credit lines for them to lend to SMEs, and we also closed financing on some big projects to show other financial institutions, especially foreign institutions, that we were sort of bullish on Cote d'Ivoire and we felt that Cote d'Ivoire was a good risk.
Risk hedging, a field covered by the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, another arm of the World Bank Group, provided political risk guarantees worth more than $2 billion to private sector investments in key sectors of the economy, such as electricity, gas, and infrastructure.
Historically, we supported Cote d'Ivoire in the area of transportations, energy, as well as tourism. Going forward, we would like to take back what we learned today about the kind of national importance of a national agenda. Then we would like to kind of study what we can do. So it is too early for us to say we want to do this at this moment.
In June 2012, the country won debt forgiveness. After attaining the completion point, in other words, the point where debt relief becomes permanent, under the heavily indebted Poor Countries Initiative. Debt cancellation came as a reward to the implementation of a series of major reforms in the coffee and cocoa sector, in public financial management, and in budget transparency, among other things. The challenge we've had while making the coffee and cocoa reform was to establish a minimum guaranteed price of 60% of the international price and a system to forward sales to make farmers less vulnerable to the daily price fluctuations on international markets. Today this is done. Significantly, HIPC rids Cote d'Ivoire of a heavy debt burden of over 6 billion francs CFA and allows the country to restore its credibility on the international market. Before the completion point, our debt ratio was at 351%. After the completion point, debt ratio fell to 97%. These are efficient criteria that make our country a credible one going forward. Notwithstanding, the challenges are daunting. So too are social demands at the end of the October 2010 post-election crisis. Under these conditions, achievements brought about thanks to HIPC are diversely appreciated.
La Côte d'Ivoire était le pays endetté. Maintenant, bon, que les dettes, ils ont déjà laissé ça, mais je ne sens rien de bon.
On sent qu'il y a un développement maintenant. Il y a de l'amélioration dans tout ce que nous avons maintenant en matière de routes, d'écoles, d'information. En tout cas, surtout, pratiquement tout.
On disait le PPT est arrivé, on pensait qu'on allait nous mettre de l'argent dans les mains, mais là on ne voit pas. Il faut que leur intervention soit à tous les niveaux, au niveau des femmes en général, même pas forcément les femmes en ville, mais les femmes dans le milieu rural, partout, au niveau des jeunes, à tous les niveaux, il faut que ça se ressente. Tout ce n'est pas du développement, ça doit se ressentir un peu partout.
Grâce à ça, je continue mes études, je commence à aller à l'école. L'inscription de mon école a diminué. Avant c'était 8 000, maintenant elle est devenue 5 000. Donc, je vois que ça marche.
Invited to react to the patience of some social groups to see the fruits of the HIPC initiative translate into an average family's budget that goes further and affords more, the World Bank country director replies.
Je pense qu'il y a un malentendu aussi sur le PPTE qu'il faut dissiper. Annulation de la dette ne veut pas dire que cet argent sera immédiatement traduit dans des salaires, que cet argent va être divisé entre les 22 millions d'Ivoiriens. Non, ça ne se passe pas comme ça. D'abord, c'est de l'argent que la Côte d'Ivoire doit mobiliser, parce qu'elle devait mobiliser ses ressources pour payer la dette. Donc elle doit mobiliser ses ressources, et maintenant ces ressources seront affectées progressivement à ces projets, des écoles, des routes, des centres de santé, etc. Ça prend du temps. Donc je pense que les populations sont impatientes, c'est vrai, mais de plus en plus, les gens verront que le gouvernement de Côte d'Ivoire est en mesure de faire face à des investissements aujourd'hui qu'on ne voyait pas avant le PPTE.
September 2012. Dr. Jim Young Kim has been president of the World Bank Group for some weeks at this stage.
We have to believe in the future of Cote d'Ivoire because the future of Cote d'Ivoire will impact the future of the region and the continent. We at the World Bank are fully committed to doing everything we can as a partner to helping Cote d'Ivoire go down the path of prosperity.
Paris, December 5, 2012. World Bank office in Paris. Cote d'Ivoire's partners make a major pledge to provide more than $6 billion in funding support for the 2012-2015 National Development Plan. In the sidelines of the annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF in Washington, D.C., Ivorian Prime Minister Daniel Kablan-Duncan reminded donors of their commitments.
The consultative group that has been organized in December last year in Paris, and there was some commitment made by the World Bank group with $2 billion to Cote d'Ivoire, while we have $600 million as far as AIDA is concerned, and $700 million with IFC, and $700 million with MEGA. And that's on the way, and things are going on well. I have to stress the fact that in Cote d'Ivoire, the private sector is the engine of the economy. So we have already used the $700 million as far as MEGA is concerned in 2 years, and that's the same thing as far as IFC is concerned.
Since 2010, cooperation between the World Bank Group and Cote d'Ivoire has been formalized in a partnership strategy. The basic cooperation framework/guide, which is in force until late 2014. Despite improvements at the level of reconstruction, difficulties persist and progress remains fragile. The biggest challenge and the most important question is, how can we make many ex-combatants and youth benefit right now, during a period that is still difficult for a large number of the population? The World Bank has a precise warrant in a country and a comparative advantage in the economic and private sector. We must restore the trust in the state, restore the trust between the society and the state. We must restore the trust inside the society. A lot has to be done. Knowing the extent of the crisis we've lived, we can realize that the society needs time. It is not in 2.5 or 3 years that we are going to do the appraisal of more than 10 years of political and social crisis. The World Bank of the 2000s is no longer that of the 1980s, when it used to be criticized for its infamous structural adjustment programs. Its work on the same side as the Ivorian people during the crisis period helped deepen its understanding of the complexity of the development task at hand.
The bank alone cannot do this. The bank has to continue to work with the other donors and other partners. But I think it's also important to note that the government of Cote d'Ivoire actually is the leading financier of its own development. Government does provide...
This is the way nations and institutions are built, with ups and downs, through periods of conflict and moments of peace. But nothing, absolutely nothing, is more desired than peace, which remains the indispensable and real driver of development.